So, if you wake up at 3 in the morning with your brain just absolutely racing, staring at the ceiling, your very first instinct is probably to force yourself back to sleep. Like you clench your jaw, you squeeze your eyes shut, and you basically treat that midnight restlessness like a disease you need to eradicate.
Totally. We treat it like an invader.
Exactly. And we do the exact same thing with our emotions, don't we?
We really do.
Like if you feel a sudden wave of grief or just a massive spike of anxiety or even this hollow ache of isolation, the immediate modern impulse is to just bleach it out.
Bleach it out, delete it, medicate it.
Right. Distract yourself. Scroll on your phone for hours until the feeling just magically goes away.
Which, spoiler alert, it never actually does.
No, it never does. But, what if that 3.0 a.m. anxiety isn't actually a glitch in your system?
That's the million-dollar question.
Like, what if it is actually your brain trying to solve a problem that you have been actively, deliberately ignoring all day long?
It is a really profound shift in perspective when you stop looking at your difficult emotions as intruder and you start looking at them as raw materials.
Raw materials, I like that.
Yeah, and that is exactly the psychological pivot we are exploring in today's deep dive, using what I think is a pretty incredibly unique piece.
It really is. So today, we are looking at a narrative that is set in the world of Hogwarts.
Yes.
Specifically, it's a collection of 4 distinct, really atmospheric tales about students who find themselves wandering the magical castle in the dead of night.
Right. They all end up in the same place eventually.
Exactly. They eventually find their way into these deep, hidden corners of the Hogwarts kitchen. But here's the context you need, because this is wild.
This is my favorite part.
This material was originally designed as a sleep story.
Literally meant to put you to sleep.
Right. It is literally engineered to lull you into unconsciousness with these soft descriptions of bubbling cauldrons and moonlight hitting stone floors.
Very cozy.
But we are going to do the exact opposite.
We are waking it up.
We are waking it up. We are going to take these 4 midnight narratives, which, by the way, involve everything from brewing enchanted tea and baking with crystallized dream ovens to magical puddings and literally whispering pantry hints.
It's so rich.
It's amazing. And we are going to use them as a masterclass in emotional alchemy.
Because that's what it really is beneath the surface.
Right. We are going to unpack the actual grounded psychology behind how these fictional students learn to transform things like homesickness, restlessness, grief, and isolation into profound connection and wisdom.
Because what is so compelling about this material is that the magic in these stories, it doesn't function as a quick fix.
No wands waving to cure depression.
Exactly. There are no wands being waved to instantly cure a heavy heart. The magic simply provides a physical, tangible framework for the deeply human work of processing difficult emotions.
Right. It gives them a process.
Yeah. The setting is fantasy, obviously, but the psychological mechanisms at play here, things like somatic processing, cognitive diffusion, and sublimation, they're entirely real.
And immediately applicable to our waking lives.
Exactly.
So I want to say this directly to you, the listener. Whether you are someone who struggles with chronic insomnia or, maybe someone who is currently carrying the heavy, jagged stone of early grief.
Or just someone searching for a deeper sense of belonging.
Right. In a world that can feel just relentlessly isolating right now, there is a specific recipe for you in this deep dive, and we are going to break it all down.
Let's begin with the first student who wanders down to the kitchens.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So her name is Emma. She is a first-year Gryffindor, and she is suffering from a severe, almost paralyzing case of homesickness.
Like the really bad kind.
The worst kind. It has been 2 months since she arrived at the school, and the narrative describes this feeling as a literal stone in her chest.
Wow, a stone.
Yeah. She cannot sleep. The grandness of the castle, the enchanted ceilings, the crackling fires of her common room, none of it makes a difference.
It's just noise to her at this point.
Exactly. She just desperately misses her mother's lavender soap, her father's coffee, and this detail always gets me, the specific smell of the dust in her childhood bedroom.
Oh man, that detail about the dust is so real.
Isn't it?
It's not just missing the people, it is an attachment injury to a physical environment.
Yes.
Like when we talk about homesickness from a neurological standpoint, it is a genuine stress response.
Absolutely.
Your brain is registering the unfamiliarity of your new environment as a literal survival threat, which spikes your cortisol.
Your body thinks it's in danger.
Right. So Emma is completely untethered. So unable to sleep, she wanders the corridors.
As you do in Hogwarts.
Naturally. And she finds herself drawn by this incredibly complex aroma to a hidden circular alcove in the farthest corner of the kitchens.
It's such a beautifully described space.
It really is. It's this impossible architectural space, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's deep underground, yet it has these arched windows that perfectly catch the moonlight.
Which shouldn't make sense, but it works.
Magic. And sitting in the center of this silver-lit room is an ancient house elf named Sage.
Sage is a beautifully constructed character.
Tell us about him.
Well, he doesn't wear the rough utilitarian cloth of a normal working elf. The text actually describes his robes as flowing fabric woven directly from moonbeams.
Woven from moonbeams. That is so evocative.
And he is tending to this elaborate, almost overwhelming array of tea implements. Crystal pots, unglazed clay cups, delicate porcelain.
He's prepared?
Very. And when Emma steps into the alcove and apologizes for intruding, Sage doesn't scold her. He doesn't shoo her back to bed.
Which is what you'd expect a school employee to do.
Right. But he invites her in. He explains that this specific alcove is a sanctuary designed for brewing emotions.
Brewing emotions, not curing them.
Exactly. He tells her that he has been preparing his tools since sunset because the phase of the new moon specifically calls for the brewing of homesickness.
Wait, okay, look at the framing Sage is using there, because I think this is so important.
Yeah, let's unpack it.
He explicitly tells Emma that he does not use magic to fix, cure, or make her problems disappear.
Right.
His exact words are, "This is magic to help feelings breathe."
Help feelings breathe. It's so countercultural.
It really is. And I want to dig into that because it runs completely counter to how we are taught to handle negative feelings.
Oh, 100%.
Like I said earlier, if I spill coffee on my favorite white shirt, my immediate goal is to obliterate the stain.
Get the bleach?
I want bleach. I want it gone so I can pretend it never happened at all.
We all do.
But Sage treats this heavy, painful emotion like a rare tea leaf, like something that needs to be carefully steeped.
Yes.
So from a psychological standpoint, what is the actual difference between trying to fix a feeling and brewing it?
The difference is honestly everything.
Okay, walk me through it.
Well, when you talk about bleaching a stain, you are describing what psychologists call experiential avoidance.
Experiential avoidance.
Exactly. It is the active attempt to suppress, ignore, or alter negative internal experience. And the data on this is overwhelming.
It doesn't work, does it?
No, it backfires spectacularly.
Yeah.
The harder you try to suppress a thought or a feeling, the louder and more persistent it becomes.
Oh, like the whole "don't think of a pink elephant" thing.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
It is like trying to hold a huge beach ball underwater.
It takes so much effort.
It takes a massive amount of cognitive energy, and eventually your arms get tired and it just explodes right back to the surface, usually hitting you in the face.
Because the brain interprets the suppression as a confirmation that's actually dangerous.
You nailed it. By fighting the homesickness so hard, Emma's brain is essentially saying to her nervous system, wow, we must be in terrible danger if we are fighting this thing off with so much energy.
Wow, okay, so that's the bleach approach.
Right. Now compare that to Sage's philosophy of brewing.
Okay.
Brewing is a process of extraction, transformation, and integration.
Integration. That's a big word in therapy right now.
It is. And this aligns very closely with ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy.
Right, right.
In ACT, the goal is not to eliminate difficult feelings. The goal is to be present with them and let them move through you.
Give them space.
Exactly. Because when you brew tea, you do not destroy the tea leaf.
No.
You introduce a medium, the hot water, that gently coaxes out the essence of the leaf so that it can be consumed and integrated into your body.
That is such a profound metaphor.
Sage is teaching Emma that her homesickness is not a pathogen. It's not a virus that needs to be cured.
Right.
It is a valid emotional experience that needs a safe container so it can be fully felt and processed.
And the container he creates is this highly specific, deeply intentional physical ritual.
The details of the ritual are incredible.
They really are. He doesn't just, toss a Lipton tea bag into a mug of boiling water and microwave it.
Definitely not.
He tells Emma that homesickness requires exact care. He says if you use too much heat, the emotion transforms into bitterness.
Yep.
But if you use too little heat, the emotion remains raw and unprocessed chest.
The precision there is deeply symbolic, but it actually has real roots in how our nervous systems regulate.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, Sage tells her the water must be heated to a very specific, he says, warm enough to release the S, cool enough to preserve the love.
That's beautiful.
It is. And this mirrors the concept of the window of tolerance in trauma therapy.
Okay, the window of tolerance. Explain that.
So if a person gets too emotionally activated, like too hot, they panic. They become hyper-aroused.
And that's the bitterness.
Right, that's the bitterness and the lashing out. But If they're completely disconnected and numb, too cold, they become hypoaroused.
Ah, and that's the raw, unprocessed state, the stone in the chest.
Exact. Sage is helping her find the exact optimal temperature for emotional process, the safe middle ground.
The window.
Yep. And consider the physical leaves themselves. Sage explains that they are harvested from liminal spaces.
Liminal spaces, like in between places.
Right. Places where the home meets the journey, where the familiar edge of a forest meets the wild unknown.
And he says they smell of complex nostalgia.
Yes.
Which is perfectly symbolic because that is exactly the psychological space Emma is trapped in, right?
He is the living embodiment of a liminal space.
Right. She is caught in the doorway between her childhood identity and her new independent life at school. She's not quite a kid anymore, but she's not fully independent either.
She's on the threshold.
Exactly. And then the physical action of the brewing sage stirs the water counterclockwise?
Yeah. Any idea why?
Well, he says it is to honor the past.
Right.
And he stirs it incredibly slowly to give the feelings enough time to act, which I love.
And the number of stirs.
He stirs it exactly 13 times to represent the 13 different ways that love can travel across a physical.
The intentionality is just staggering.
It is. But, I mean, taking off the wizard hat, what does a ritual like that actually do for the human brain?
It creates a mechanism called cognitive diffusion.
Cognitive diffusion. DE fusion.
Yes, diffusion. Like separating two things. When emotions are trapped entirely inside your head, they feel infinite, they feel chaotic, and they feel completely attached to your identity.
Right, they feel like they are you.
Exactly. You don't say, I am experiencing homesickness. You say, I am homesick.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the language.
Physical ritual takes that internal chaos and it externalizes.
It puts it out into the world.
By focusing on the temperature of the water, the direction of the stir, the specific number of rotations, Sage is giving Emma's overwhelming feelings a boundary.
He's giving it a shape.
Right. He is making the intangible tangible. It allows Emma to step back and observe the emotion happening in the teapot rather than just drowning in it inside her own chest.
Which is made completely literal in the story.
Yes, the steam.
Right. And she sits there and watches him stir. She literally sees shapes forming in the steam rising from the pot.
She sees her parents.
She sees her mother's profile. She sees her father's hand. But because of the ritual, those images don't trigger that sharp, stabbing pain of panic anymore.
They're condemned.
Yeah, they just linger in the air to acknowledge the love that exists. And then comes the moment of truth.
She drinks.
She finally drinks the tea. It is described as a twilight-colored, and it doesn't taste like generic chamomile or peppermint or anything like that.
No, it tastes terrible, actually.
Well, the text says it tastes exactly like her homesickness.
Right.
It tastes like the physical ache and the hollow space in her chest.
It tastes like the sadness.
But drinking it does not make the feeling disappear. It suddenly gives the feeling context.
And that is the moment of true emotional alchemy.
Yeah.
And it is driven by the core realization that Sage offers her right in that moment. As she is drinking this tea that tastes like sorrow, Sage looks at her and says,
Missing means loving.
Yes, missing means loving. And love is simply love with nowhere to go.
That line destroys me.
It's so powerful because that single reframe changes Emma's entire physiological state. Her homesickness goes from being this heavy, isolating stone that she is actively being crushed by to being a proof of connection.
It proves she has a family that she loves.
Exactly. It proves that she has roots that run deep in good, nourishing soil.
Love with a nowhere to go. It just completely flips the narrative.
It does.
Because normally, if I'm feeling sad, my core belief is that something is wrong.
We pathologize our own feelings so quickly.
Right. Something is broken. I need to fix it. But Sage's reframe means that the sadness is actually a symptom of something incredibly healthy.
A secure attachment.
Yes, a secure attachment to her family. It's a massive.
And what I really appreciate about this narrative is that it isn't presented as a one-time magical cure-all.
Right. It's not a Disney movie.
No. Emma doesn't drink the tea, smile, and then never feel sad again for the rest of her life.
She keeps going back.
She returns to the sanctuary as the lunar cycle progresses. 6 nights later, under the half moon, she goes back to the alcove. She learns to brew courage.
And the book specifically notes that this isn't the loud, roaring battle cry kind of courage.
Right, it's not Gryffindor sword-swinging courage.
No, it is the quiet courage required to sit still with difficulties.
Which is often much harder.
Way harder. And later, under the full moon, she learns to brew gratitude.
Which demonstrates a really highly realistic view of emotional regulation. You know, it's a lifelong practice, not a final destination you just arrive at.
You don't just graduate from having feelings.
Exactly. Through these lunar cycles, Emma eventually transitions from being a patient to actually being Sage's assistant.
Oh, I love that part. She starts helping the others.
Yes.
Yeah.
She starts helping other students who wander down. She brews tea for a 7th-year student who is dealing with a paralysis of grief.
Wow.
And she helps a Slytherin who is suffocating under the weight of their own perfection.
Sounds like a typical Slytherin.
Right. She learns that these heavy emotions are not obstacles blocking her path to maturity. They are the very ingredients of her wisdom.
The raw materials.
Exactly. And the ultimate proof of this integration happens at the end of the school year.
When she goes home.
When Emma goes home for the summer, she realizes something profound. She doesn't need Sage anymore.
She doesn't need the magic.
Right. She doesn't need the silver-lit alcove.
Yeah.
She stands in her parents' utterly normal, non-magical kitchen, and she brews ordinary grocery store tea with that exact same mindful intention.
It works.
It yields the exact same emotional ground.
The magic was really just giving her the permission to feel.
That's all it ever was.
It's just a gorgeous narrative arc about processing deep, internal, static sorrow.
Beautifully put.
But as I was reading this, I found myself thinking stepping back and accepting sadness makes total sense.
Right.
But what if the emotion you're dealing with isn't a static sorrow?
What if it's active?
Exactly. What if the emotion is violently active? What if it is an intense, kinetic, buzzing energy that physically will not let you sit still, let alone...
Very different.
Right. Acceptance just doesn't seem like enough for that kind of energy. You can't just sit and brew a cup of tea when you feel like you have electricity in your veins.
No, you definitely can't.
And that question takes us to a completely different corner of the kitchens and to our second student, Dave.
Yes. So if Emma's story is about integrating heavy static emotion, David's journey is an exploration of navigating hyper-arousal.
Hyper-arousal.
David is a Ravenclaw student who is suffering from severe chronic insomnia.
The word.
While all of his dorm mates are sleeping soundly, he is lying awake, completely exhausted but physically unable to turn his brain off.
His processor is just spinning.
And when he finally does manage to drift into sleep for like a few minutes, he doesn't get actual rest.
All right, he gets those dreams.
He experiences these hyper-vivid, wandering dreams. He dreams of impossible, massive landscapes, mountains that have crystal voices, oceans that literally taste like starlight.
Which sounds cool, but it's exhausting.
He wakes up feeling like his spirit has been running marathons all night, while his physical body has just been trapped in bed.
Anyone who struggles with ADHD or just garden variety clinical anxiety knows that exact. Your physical battery is at 1%, but your mental processor is overclocking at 100.
It's absolutely.
It is torture. So at 3 a.m, David finally gives up on sleep entirely. He follows the scent of cardamom and sweet down into the depths of the...
Because where else would you go?
Right. But he wanders away from the main cooking area. He finds himself in this dark, forgotten corner where he discovers these incredible ancient dream ovens.
The dream ovens. I love this concept.
They're constructed out of a crystalline stone, and they pulse with a glow, kind of like the aurora borealis.
Very ethereal.
And standing furiously in front of them is Whisper. Whisper is a tiny house elf wearing a baker's apron, and he is clearly having an absolute break.
Whisper is in a state of just utter despair.
Why?
Well, he is attempting to bake using these ancient ovens, but as the name implies, they do not run on wood or ordinary magical fire.
Right. They're dream ovens.
They are fueled entirely by the heat of the baker's dreams from the night before.
Which is a crazy concept.
It really is. But there is a fundamental mismatch happening for Whisper. His dreams are far too intense.
Because he doesn't dream about baking.
No, he doesn't dream of baking at all. He dreams of wild adventure. He dreams of breaking free from the castle, fighting dragons, and seeing the world.
The text notes that his dreams taste of cinnamon and lightning.
Cinnamon and lightning. And because that psychological energy is so hot, so explosive, it is incinerating everything he puts in the oven.
Every single pastry is just getting...
Every single one is immediately reduced to a blackened crisp.
Okay, so David walks in and assesses. Whisper is deeply frustrated because his intense energy is destroying his work.
David is deeply exhausted because his intense energy is destroying his rest.
They're both burning out. Yes. And David's proposed solution to this is, hey, what if we put our dreams together into the oven?
Which sounds reckless.
Which sounds completely reckless. And I have to be honest, I fundamentally push back on the logic here.
Let's hear it.
Okay, if I have a car with a broken engine that is literally on fire, and you have a car with a shattered steering column, smashing our two cars together at high speed does not suddenly give us a working vehicle.
No, it gives you a bigger fire.
Exactly. You have two highly volatile, dysfunctional, disruptive energy. Isn't combining David's exhausting hyperarousal with Whisper's explosive frustration just adding jet fuel to a forest fire?
It's a fair point.
How does that not just blow the oven up entirely?
It is a completely logical concern. And honestly, in many psychological scenarios, putting two highly dysregulated individuals together does result in a total blowout.
Right.
It's a phenomenon called co-escalation.
Co-escalation?
Yeah, where you just feed off each other's panic. But your car analogy assumes that David and Whisper possess two broken parts of the same system.
Oh, and they don't.
They don't. What David intuitively recognizes here is a principle of emotional complementarity.
Complementarity.
They are two opposing elements that lack a tempering force. Whisper's energy is purely kinetic. It is explosive and aggressively forward-moving. It's cinnamon and lightning.
High heat.
Very high heat. David's energy, on the other hand, is expansive, diffuse, and endless.
The vanilla and wild mint.
Right, the wandering dream. Whisper has immense heat without direction or boundary. David has infinite space and boundary, but absolutely no grounding focus.
Ah, okay. I see the distinction now. So it's less about smashing two broken engines together and more about like mixing a highly acidic compound with a highly alkaline base to create something neutral and stable.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to look at it.
David realizes that the calm, vast emptiness of his wandering dream might be the exact atmospheric buffer needed to absorb and temper the lightning of Whisper's.
He provides the container.
And Whisper, despite being a house elf who is deeply conditioned to adhere to a strict hierarchy and, work completely alone in the shadows, is desperate enough to agree to this unprecedented collaboration with a student.
He's at his wit's end.
He really is.
And the process they use to actually bake the bread together is just a total masterclass in psychological co-regulation.
Walk us through that because it's so...
Whisper instructs David that they must shape the dough while actively holding the memory of the dreams they want to share in their minds.
So it takes active focus.
Yes, but the crucial instruction is that they cannot force the magic. They cannot demand that the oven take the heat.
I can't force it.
No, they must invite the dreams to lend their energy to the dough.
Right.
And even more importantly, once the bread is actually in the oven, they can't just walk away. They have to sit on the floor in front of the crystalline stone and they have to talk.
This was the wildest part to me.
They have to share their stories, their fears, their vulnerabilities, and their deepest longings with each other. Whisper explains that this verbal emotional sharing is what actually keeps the two opposing dreams connected and balanced inside the oven.
That is just fascinating. The communication is the thermostat.
It regulates the heat.
It totally implies that if they stop talking, if they close themselves off and stop being vulnerable with each other, the system doesn't just power down, it actively overheats and burns the breading. Their vulnerability is a literal safety.
It is the only thing keeping the magic stable.
So you have this insomniac teenager and this fiercely ambitious house elf sitting on the cold stone floor at 4 a.m., just pouring their souls out to each other.
It's a beautiful image.
And the result of that co-regulation is astonishing. The oven chimes, and they pull out this massive loaf of golden bread.
The crusts literally shift and move.
Yeah, the crusts move like cloud formations, and when they eat it, it tastes like both excitement and peace simultaneously.
The perfect balance.
It tastes like the deep, fulfilling satisfaction of collaborative.
What we are witnessing here on a psychological level is a beautiful metaphorical representation of sublimation.
Sublimation. Okay, what is that?
In psychology, sublimation is a mature defense mechanism. It's where socially unacceptable impulses or overwhelming excess energies are transformed into socially acceptable creative actions.
Like channeling your rage into painting.
Exactly. Whisper takes his frustrated ambition, and David takes his agonizing hyperarousal, and instead of suppressing those energies, they sublimate them into the creation of nourishment.
They make bread.
And what's remarkable is how this isolated success naturally spawns an entire community.
Because word gets out.
Word quietly spreads among the student body. Soon, other insomniacs are creeping down to the kitchens in the middle of the night.
There's a whole club of them.
A girl named Sarah brings her gentle, healing flower dreams to temper the oven. A boy named Marcus brings his rigid, precision-based dream.
They organically create this midnight bakery.
A sanctuary of restless souls who learn to channel their excess nighttime neurodivergence into collaborative art.
And doing this fundamentally changes David's waking life, too.
It's not just a hobby.
Right, it isn't just a fun midnight activity. His schoolwork improved. He stops viewing charm spells as blunt force instruments, and he starts seeing them as recipes that require a delicate balance of opposing energies.
It shifts his whole worldview.
But the most profound shift is entirely internal. For years, David viewed his insomnia and his racing mind as a curse.
A biological failure.
Exactly, a failure that he just had to endure. But looking at the golden bread, he realizes his restlessness was actually a bridge.
A bridge.
It was the exact mechanism that led him to a collaboration he never would have found if he had been normal.
Which leaves us with a truly powerful framework to apply to our own life. Almost everyone has a trait, an anxiety, a hyperfixation, or a restlessness that they view purely as a flaw.
Something they want to hide.
We spend so much time thinking, if only I could just turn this part of my brain off, I would finally be fixed.
If I could just be normal.
But David's story challenges that premise entirely. It asks us to consider, what if your perceived flaw is actually just half of a brilliant unmade recipe. What if your excess energy, your specific brand of neurodivergence, or your chronic overthinking is simply waiting for a partner?
Waiting for the right oven.
Exactly. Whether that is a collaborative project, a specific environment, or another person where that exact energy becomes the necessary heat to create something beautiful.
Stop trying to extinguish your fire and instead focus on finding the right oven to put it in.
That's the takeaway.
That is an incredibly empowering way to view anxiety or hyperactivity. You take current active buzzing energy and you channel it forward.
Sublimation in act.
But this brings up a massive challenge.
Oh, what's that?
Well, active energy, even negative active energy like David's, can be sublimated because it inherently wants to move.
Right. It's kinetic.
What happens when the energy you are carrying isn't buzzing and active at all?
Ah, I see where you're going.
What happens when your energy is entirely rooted in the past and the fire is completely gone out?
We're talking about grief.
Yes. How does someone in the crushing, paralyzing depths of clinical grief actually create anything? They don't have fire to put in an oven.
No, they don't. And that is the exact threshold we cross as we enter the third section of our deep dive.
This is Hannah's story.
This is Hannah's story. And I have to say, it is a profound, incredibly accurate exploration of how humans actually process grief.
It's her.
It is. Hannah is a Hufflepuff student. It's just a random Tuesday morning, and she receives a letter via owl.
Normal mail delivery.
Right. She recognizes the handwriting immediately. It's her father's, precise and careful, but the contents of the letter are just devastating. Her beloved 87-year-old grandmother, Eleanor P., has passed away peacefully in her.
And the way the source material describes Hannah's immediate reaction is so authentic to the shock of early grief.
It doesn't dramatize it.
No. There is no wailing or dramatic breakdown in the Great Hall. Instead, she just goes completely nuts.
The freeze response.
She walks through her classes for the rest of the day like a sleepwalker. She describes the world as sounding like it's underwater, muffled, and distant.
Which is very clinically accurate.
It isn't until that night, when she is finally alone in her four-poster bed, surrounded by the slow, rhythmic, sleeping breaths of her roommate, that the reality of the loss actually breaks through the shock.
That's always when it hit, in the quiet.
Always. She is wearing a dressing gown that her grandmother actually knitted for her, and she is suddenly hit with this agonizing, visceral longing.
It's physical pain at that point.
Yes, and it's not just a general sadness. It is a hyper-specific craving for the feeling of being a child in her grandmother's kitchen, making her famous treacle pudding.
Which highlights something really important, how inextricably linked food and memory are, particularly in the context of attachment and care.
Right, the nostalgia factor.
But it's more than nostalgia, it's neurology. The olfactory bulb, which processes smell, has direct neurological pathways to the amygdala and the hippocampus.
Which do what?
They govern emotion and episodic memory. When we crave a comfort food from our childhood, we are rarely craving the actual nutritional macros of the dish.
We're not craving the carbs.
No. We are craving the neurochemical safety that the dish represents.
Ah, that makes so much sense.
Driven by this desperate, almost frantic need to recreate that feeling of safety, Hannah wanders down to the kitchens in the middle. She wants to make the treacle pudding.
But there is a huge problem.
Right. She cannot remember the exact recipe.
Frustrating.
She knows the constituent parts, golden syrup, breadcrumbs, eggs, butter, but the exact proportions, the temperature, the method, they completely elude her.
Her brain is just blank.
Because the cognitive load of her grief is literally blocking her memory retrieval.
So she is standing in this massive Hogwarts kitchen, frantically tearing through cabinets, looking for ingredients, just searching for some kind of anchor in the storm.
She's desperate.
And as she is reaching behind a large pepper grinder, her fingers brush against something smooth and warm.
The artifact.
It's a magical artifact. It is a glowing, leather-bound cooker.
I want this book so badly.
Same! There is no title on the spine, just an impression of intertwining spoons and whisks pressed into the leather cover.
In the ink inside.
When she opens it, it's not printed text. The ink flows across the parchment like liquid silver, and the heading on the first page reads, Comfort Food Memory, a collection of love made edible.
Collection of love made edible. It is literally an archive of emotional history.
It really is.
And what is so fascinating is that this book doesn't just list ingredients in a vacuum. It meticulously records the circumstances and the specific emotional intent behind historical recipes.
Yeah, the examples it gives are amazing.
As Hannah flips through the pages, she sees a recipe for Molly Weasley's healing soup.
Molly Weasley.
Yes. The notes explain that it was created during a terrible freezing winter when her sons, Fred and George, were dangerously ill.
And the recipe doesn't just say add carrots, does it?
No, it notes that Molly stirred the pot clockwise, specifically to invoke magical protection, and that she whispered prayers into the steam with every single rotation of the ladle.
every single rotation.
The book explicitly states that it was the love and fierce maternal protection infused into the soup that ultimately mended the boy's broken spirit.
Which I love because it implies the magic is in the intention, not the wand.
Exactly.
And there is also a page dedicated to Professor McGonagall's shortbread.
Oh, I loved this detail.
It notes that she shaped the dough using exact transfiguration precision, and she baked it specifically to cure her own severe Scottish homesickness during her early lonely years.
McGonagall was homesick.
Right. And the students who ate the shortbread in her office over the years never knew they were essentially consuming her remedy for loneliness.
It's this beautiful idea that these legendary Stoic figures were quietly channeling their heaviest emotional burdens into the food they served to others.
Which perfectly sets up Hannah's encounter with the house elf, Memory.
Yes, Memory is an older, incredibly gentle house elf who quietly approaches Hannah as she is reading the book.
And Memory explains.
Memory explains the fundamental nature of this specific cookbook. It does not provide recipes in the traditional instructional sense.
Right.
It provides understanding. When Hannah finally turns to the page that miraculously displays her grandmother's treacle pudding, the ink does not say 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of sugar.
What does it say?
It lists the ingredients as breadcrumbs enough to soak up sorrow and syrup sweet as childhood laugh.
Okay, and this is where I have to pause and ask a purely practical.
Okay, lay it on it.
Because I get the poetry of it. It's beautiful. I love the metaphor. But if I am a grieving teenager standing in a kitchen with a mixing bowl and a whisk, breadcrumbs enough to soak up sorrow is the world's most frustratingly vague Pinterest recipe.
It's not exactly helpful for measuring.
No. How does a human being actually execute a recipe that flatly refuses to give literal measurement? Add sorrow until you feel better, doesn't tell me when to stop pouring the breadcrumbs.
Right.
How does she bake a physical, literal cake out of a metaphor?
It is a brilliant question because it forces us to look at what is actually happening neurologically when we cook for comfort.
Okay, tell me.
Memory teaches Hannah a profound lesson in embodied cognition and somatic processing.
Somatic processing again.
Yes. Memory explains that comfort food does not comfort you simply because of the sugar and carbs you ingest at the end of the process.
It's not just the sugar rush.
The comfort is generated through the act of creation itself.
Ooh.
The cook must bring the memory into the present moment and stir with deliberate intention. Memory asks Hannah a really grounding question. She says, "What did your grandmother's kitchen actually feel like?"
She asks her to remember the feeling, not...
Exactly. Hannah closes her eyes and realizes it felt like absolute safety. It felt like capability. Her grandmother made her feel like the messy, imperfect things they were creating deeply mattered.
That is so sweet.
And Memory looks at her and says, "Those are your true ingredients. Can you cook with those?"
So the baking is actually an exercise in somatic processing.
Completely.
She is taking the internal paralyzing weight of her grief, and she's physically moving it through her nervous system and out.
Getting it out of her body.
Right. As Hannah begins to mix the ingredients, she isn't just throwing things into a bowl. When she hits a cold, stubborn lump of butter that won't enter, her instinct is to get frustrated.
Which is what grief feels, frustrating and stubborn.
Yes. But Memory gently coaches her to breathe through the frustration, to treat the physical resistance of the dough as a meditation.
Memory tells her that the raw ingredients teach patience, the repetitive stirring teaches rhythm, and the agonizing wait while it steams.
It's like culinary therapy.
Exactly. We are talking about the vagus nerve and bilateral stimulation here.
Bilateral stimulation, like EMDR?
Similar concept, yeah. Rhythmic, repetitive physical actions like kneading dough or whisking a batter are proven to regulate the parasympathetic nervous system.
Because you're moving your hands back and forth.
Exactly. It pulls the brain out of the freeze response of grief and brings it back into the present, grounded body.
Wow.
And the magical manifestation of this psychological truth in the story is just breathtaking.
Oh, the batter changing.
Yes. The text notes that as Hannah stops fighting her grief and starts stirring with the pure intention of honoring her grandmother's safety, the batter literally changes under her spoon.
It physically transforms.
It becomes smoother, it catches the light differently, it integrates flawlessly. Hannah can physically sense the comfort she is pouring into the bowl.
And when the pudding is finally steamed and she and Memory sit down at the wooden table to act it, Hannah has a revelation.
The climax of the story.
It isn't a perfect replica of her grandmother's pudding.
No, it's not.
And that is the absolute kicker of the whole narrative. It doesn't taste exactly the same. The texture is a little different.
It's her own version.
But it carries the exact same essential comfort. It tastes like eating a warm hug. And because she achieved that emotional resonance, because she successfully processed the feeling, her unique, slightly altered version of the recipe magically writes itself into the glowing book.
In silver script right below her grandma.
Hannah Peaton's treacle pudding.
If we connect this back to the overarching psychology of how human beings process immense loss, Hannah learns the hardest lesson of all. Grief is not about recovering what was lost. You can never perfectly recreate the past, just as she could never perfectly recreate the exact molecular structure of her grandmother's pudding.
Right, you can't go backwards.
Attempting to perfectly recreate the past only leads to more suffering. Healthy grief is about transforming the love you lost to new care. Hannah realizes that her grandmother's love didn't evaporate when she died. It transformed into a template, a spirit of care and capability that Hannah is now responsible for carrying forward to feed and comfort the next generation.
Which ties perfectly back to what Sage the elf told Emma in the very first story.
Exactly.
Grief is just love with nowhere to go. Hannah finally found somewhere for that love to go. She put it into the food.
She externalized it.
She took her own internal emotional story and baked it right into the batter.
Beautifully done.
But this progression raises one final massive question.
There's always one more question.
Hannah learned to put her emotion into the food.
Right.
But what if the food we consume already possesses its own profound...
the history of the ingredients.
What if, long before we ever bring our grief or our restlessness kitchen, the ingredients themselves have a history that...
That is the big shift.
And that brings us to the most expansive philosophical corner of the kitchens, and to our final student, Oliver.
Oliver represents a completely different kind of marginalization than what we've seen so far.
Yeah, he's not dealing with an acute crisis.
Right. He isn't crippled by acute grief. He isn't buzzing with insomnia. And he isn't homesick. He is simply profoundly isolated.
He's the invisible kid.
He's a quiet Hufflepuff who exists entirely in the background. While the other students are laughing and socializing loudly in the common rooms, Oliver prefers to volunteer for the mundane, repetitive tasks in the far corners of the kitchen.
Like peeling potatoes.
Peeling massive mounds of potatoes, organizing the dry store. He finds a deep peace in the rhythm of menial labor.
He likes being useful.
He prefers being quietly useful over being noticed. He is a boy who has accepted that he belongs in the margins of life.
But the narrative reveals that his quietness is actually great power.
Because he can listen.
Exactly. Because he's so quiet, he is capable of one Tuesday evening in late November, while he is meticulously organizing a massive, dusty rack of obscure spice, starts hearing whispers.
And is not ghosts.
No. And they aren't coming from the house elves, and they aren't coming from the portraits on the walls. They are coming from the shelves.
The jars.
He picks up a simple glass jar of pickled onions, and the jar starts speaking.
It tells him its story.
It tells him the story of the pregnant, exhausted farmer's wife who harvested and pickled them, and how she stirred her quiet, desperate hopes for her unborn baby into the brine.
It's so intense.
He touches a heavy glass bottle of olive oil, and it starts singing to him in a language he somehow understands.
Singing about what?
Singing about ancient Mediterranean suns, rocky soil, and the deep gnarled roots that have stubbornly nourished generations of families.
It is an extraordinary, overwhelming sensory phenomenon.
I would be terrified.
He is a little terrified.
Yeah.
And he is guided through this awakening by Rosemary, an older, deeply grounded house elf whose very name signifies remembrance.
Rosemary.
Rosemary explains the rules of this magic to him. She says that the ingredients will speak, but only to those who handle them with absolute reverence.
Reverence, that's a strong word.
They only speak to someone who inherently understands that food is more than just caloric sustenance or a commodity to be consumed.
Right.
Because Oliver has spent his entire life working in the marge, treating the humble potato with the exact same respect as a rare magical artifact. It was only a matter of time before the earth started talking back to him.
Okay, my modern analogy for this is intense, but hear me out. Imagine you are walking in a massive supermarket. You are exhausted after work. You grab a plastic box of cereal, you put it in your cart, and suddenly a high-definition, emotionally devastating documentary film downloads directly into your brain. You instantly feel the exhaustion of the farmer who planted the grain, the backache of the truck driver who hauled it, the stress of the factory worker who balked.
That sounds paralyzing.
That's exactly my point. I have to push back on the story here. I really do. Isn't there a massive paralyzing danger in this level of empathy?
You think it's too much?
If you hear the life story and the suffering of literally everything you consume, doesn't the simple act of eating become a crushing burden? How do you ever take a bite of a basic apple if the apple is weeping to you about the tree it was violently torn away from?
I am so glad you brought that up, because you are describing the ultimate modern anxiety.
The paralysis of choice.
The paralysis of the ethical consumer.
Yes.
We live in an era of globalization where if we think too hard about the supply chain of our clothes or our food, the overwhelming scale of human labor and environmental cost can cause a complete psychological shutdown.
It's too big to process.
It's actually called supply chain empathy burnout.
Supply chain empathy burnout. Wow.
We feel complicit in suffering we cannot control, so our defense mechanism is to dissociate completely and just buy the cereal blindly.
Exactly. Ignorance is a survival strategy when the supply chain is that massive. So how does Oliver not just collapse under the weight of it?
Because of the psychological distinction between empathy and compassion.
Okay, what's the difference?
Empathy is feeling the pain of another as if it were your own, which leads to the burnout you just described.
Right, taking it on yourself.
Compassion, however, is witnessing the truth of another, holding space for it with reverence, and allowing it to connect you without taking on the suffering as your own identity.
Oh.
For Oliver, hearing these stories is not a burden, it is a Remember his core wound. He felt utterly isolated.
He felt invisible.
He felt like a ghost who didn't belong anywhere. When he hears the stories of thousand-year-old wheat fields, the resilience of deep winter roots surviving the frost, and the continuity of ancient sourdough starters passed down through generations, his paradigm shatters.
He's not alone anymore.
He realizes he is not alone in the margin. He is actually standing at the exact beating center of a vast, unbroken global network of care, labor, and survival.
Oh, wow. He isn't carrying the weight of the world. He is realizing that the ingredients aren't complaining to him. They just want their histories to be. They want the labor that brought them here to be acknowledged before they were consumed.
It's about.
And Oliver realizes that because of his gift, he can act as their translator.
Yes, and this leads to the most beautiful application of his magic, the story supper.
Professor Sprout gets involved.
Professor Sprout, the herbology teacher, hears rumors about what Oliver's experiencing, and she encourages him to host small, intimate dinner gatherings in the green. And these story suppers are the ultimate masterclass in what we would call mindful consumption.
How does he run?
The menus Oliver prepares are incredibly humble. Rustic bread, simple root vegetable soup, a basic salad. But Oliver serves as the conduit for the meal. And the students break the bread. He quietly shares the story of the unbroken chain of human hands that tended the wheat through drought and storm. As they eat the soup, he translates the dark, quiet history of the roots that grew deep.
He completely transforms the act of eating.
It goes from being a solitary, unconscious act of refueling between classes into an act of deep, reverent communion with the earth and with humanity.
But, and this is a crucial detail, he has very strict rules of engagement for these suppers.
He doesn't just let anyone in.
No, this is not a parlor trick. It's not dinner theater for people to just be entertained by.
Right.
The source material mentions an incident where a group of skeptical Slytherin students show up, demanding to be entertained, treating the ingredients like a magical jukebox they can just press a button on.
And what happens?
The ingredients go completely silent. They refuse to speak.
They won't perform.
Exactly. Oliver establishes a firm, non-negotiable boundary. The magic only works for those who are willing to list genuine respect.
Which is such a vital lesson in mindfulness.
You have to be completely present. You have to put your ego away and earn the trust of the stories.
You cannot demand connection. You can only cultivate the conditions for it to occur.
That's so true.
And I love that the narrative does not shy away from the darker, more complex truths of the world either.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No. The text specifically notes that as Oliver's attendees become more emotionally mature and ready to hear it, he adjusts his storytelling.
He tells them the harder stuff.
He doesn't just share pleasant stories of sunlit growth. He translates the exhaustion of exploited workers and the sorrow of degraded environments.
He tells the whole truth.
He doesn't sugarcoat the supply chain. He tells the absolute truth of the world, balancing the beauty with the cost.
And the ultimate realization for Oliver synthesizes his entire character arc. He started the year believing he was a nobody who belonged, hidden in the margins, peeling potatoes where no one would ever look at him.
Right.
But he discovers that the margins are the center.
The kitchen is the heart of the castle.
The kitchen is not the lowest part of the castle. It is the beating heart of the castle. It is the central node that connects every single student inside those stone walls to the entire living, breathing world outside.
It's the anchor.
By the end of the term, Oliver understands his true calling. He isn't just a background. He is a guide.
A translator.
His purpose is to help people realize they are an integral part of an unbroken, ancient chain of human labor, earth, and history.
It's a gorgeous ending.
So, as we step back and look at the vast tapestry we have unrolled today, the philosophical architecture of these four stories is incredibly cohesive.
It really is. They all build on each other.
Let's recap. We started with Emma.
Emma, who learned the principles of acceptance and commitment therapy. She learned to brew her internal static homesickness by creating a container for it, letting it steep and breathe instead of trying to violently bleach it out of her system.
Right. Then we moved to David.
David, who demonstrated the power of sublimation and co-regulation. He realized that his exhausting, restless insomnia wasn't a biological curse, but the exact kinetic energy needed to collaborate with Whisper's volatile dream ovens.
Stop fighting your fire, find the right oven.
Exact.
Next, we sat with Hannah.
Hannah, who explored somatic processing and embodied cognition. She learned that the only way to preserve her grandmother's love through the paralyzing weight of grief was to physically stir her own intention, her own memory of safety, into the comfort food she was creating.
She transformed lost love into new care.
Yes.
And finally, we listened.
Oliver, who cured his own deep isolation through supply chain empathy. He realized that every single bite of food we unconsciously consume connects us to a massive global history of survival and labor.
He learned that to be mindful is to realize you are never.
And what unites all four of these midnight journeys is one incredibly crucial fact.
The lack of wands.
Exactly. Think about the setting. This all takes place at Hogwarts, a literal school of witchcraft and wizardry filled with impossible spells and enchantment. But the true magic that saved these four students ultimately required absolutely no wands.
Not at all.
There were no complex incantations, no flashy transfigurations to instantly solve their problems. The true magic simply required intention, presence, vulnerability, and respect.
It was all internal.
As Emma proved when she went home for the summer and successfully brewed ordinary grocery store tea in her parents' completely mundane kitchen. You don't need a hidden, silver-lit alcove to practice emotional.
You only need the courage to be present with what you are feeling.
The magic is just paying attention.
The magic is just paying it. I love it. So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over today.
A party.
I want you to consider the last meal or the specific feeling you are carrying in your chest right exactly.
Whatever it is.
We spend so much of our waking lives trying to consume our food mindlessly while staring, trying to disconnect from the labor of the world. And we spend so much of our precious cognitive energy trying to banish, drug, or distract away our negative second they arrive.
We fight them constantly.
But what if the thing you are trying so desperately hard to get rid of your aching homesickness, your buzzing 3:10:00 a.m. restlessness, your heavy, unnameable grief, or your quiet sense of isolation is actually the exact raw ingredient you need to nourish yourself and the people?
What if it's the recipe?
Exactly. What would happen if, tonight, when the rest of the world finally stopped fighting and just decided to let your feelings